My remake for LEGO Loco is really taking shape now, and I have added so many features since the last time, making it feel like a real game. Hello and welcome back to the devlog for LEGO Loco, where I'm completely remaking it from the ground up in Unity so that it can run on modern computers and give more life to this classic game. The first thing I want to show you guys is the first thing that you'll actually see when you open the game, and that is the menu. Up to this point, there's only been one scene for the entire game, and it just chucks you straight in. But that's not exactly how games work. The LEGO Loco menu is very simple. We didn't have anything too fancy back in the day, and it's just the logo and title, the buttons for single and multiplayer, and then the bottom ones for exiting the game, a ticket for entering your name, and a play button. So making this menu didn't take me too long at all. All I did was take a screenshot of the game, put it into Unity, and then lined up each element with this template. But there was one part of this process that really confused me. You see, in the background, there's a screenshot of the game with a green filter over everything to give it a cool backing vibe. And then there's the sprites for each button. But for whatever reason, I literally cannot figure out why it works this way. Each sprite has a bit of this background as an outline. So if you line it up perfectly, it's fine. But as this menu will scale differently and is now compatible with 16:9 displays, they're all wrong, and I had to go through and remove this outline from every single element. I have no idea why they did it this way, but whatever. I tweaked all of the sprites and now the menu looks like this. It's definitely not a one-for-one remake, but I think it's partly because it just looks a lot cleaner than the original when scaled like this. You can see in the screenshot the Station Master is looking rather wide there, so I'm happy with it. I then got some of the functionality hooked up. The easiest one is the exit button, because all that does is cause for the application to close, which is literally a single line of code. Job done there. I'm not going to mess around with any of the multiplayer stuff right now. Maybe I implement it at a later stage, but it's not really a big part of the game anyway, so it might not be worth doing, at least for now. For the name, all it really is a text box over the top of a ticket, so that was pretty easy with Unity's UI stuff. But I couldn't find the exact frame they used, so it looks a little funky right now. And then finally, there's loading the game. Once you hit this button, it takes you to one of the most iconic, memorable parts of this game, the happy little Station Master whistling away, waiting for the game to load. Using Unity's scene manager, it loads the scene asynchronously in the background, and when it's ready to go, the Station Master turns his signal and the game loads up. Right now it just loads into the default scene, but when I get the save load system in place, it'll load the last save file here instead. And that is the menu all sorted, and you get into the gameplay. But what about the reverse? When you press escape in game, it opens up the most basic pause menu you'll ever see, with the classic Station Master once more making an appearance alongside two simple buttons, one to exit the game and one to close the menu. This was again extremely easy to remake, but there is one key feature that you might overlook. When you hover over the buttons, the Station Master will point to your selection. So I simply used Unity's event triggers in the same way that I did for the toy box to set the Station Master sprite to the correct one, and it looks amazing. It uses the same loading method to get back to the menu, except in this case there's no loading screen to worry about. In the toy box, most of the buttons are already implemented, but some of them still do nothing. So let's go through what's left and see if I can actually get it working yet. The first one to look at is the eraser. Somehow I still haven't added this yet, even though a lot of the code is already in place. So when you click this button, it now switches the player to erase mode. But the problem is, there wasn't actually a way to click on a building. The building object itself doesn't have a collider or any way to click on it directly, and the grid system doesn't have a way to search for a building based on its coordinates. I tried to think of a way to go about it via the grid method, but I ended up with a pretty simple solution. I added a polygon collider 2D to the building object, and the shape is updated based on the sprite when it's created. This allows me to get the building with a simple overlap check, and then I pass it through to the object manager to get it removed. So now I can click down with the eraser and it works perfectly. I also added a little animation to the cursor, but I haven't got the effects or sound in just yet. Those will come a bit later on. Another of the toy box buttons that did nothing up to this point is the background selector. In the game, you can click this button and it opens up a whole new tab where you can choose from different backgrounds in the list. It's a very simple menu, but while I was remaking it, I ran into a few issues. The first thing was just finding the sprites in the first place. I had all of the backgrounds and an object to display them, but I cannot find where this sprite is in the files. It's not the same background logo as the one in the toy box. You can see that it's a lot more detailed, but I just can't see it anywhere. So I've had to settle for the simple logo version instead. It also took me a bit to find the menu itself, but that's because this menu is identical to the save one and it uses that sprite for it. So it was all buried in that folder, but I eventually found it and set it all up. The way the scrolling list works is basically identical to the build menus, where I use an offset integer to read from a list and update the tabs accordingly. So it starts at 0 and loads 6 backgrounds from this offset value. And when you press the down arrow, it adds 1 and the up arrow takes 1 away. It's a very clean approach to a scrolling menu and it works really well. For the backgrounds, I created a simple struct that's just a string and a sprite for the background and its name. I then just load these into the UI when needed, and when you hit the background select button, it changes the backdrop in the game. Again, it doesn't actually save this anywhere, so if you back out to the menu and load in again, it will have reset, but that'll be in the saving system later down the line. One of the settings in the toy box is the Bulldoze mode. What this does is changes the build mode so that you can place buildings over the top of others, removing the old ones as you place them. This just means that you don't have to erase anything before placing new stuff and should be pretty easy to implement. It basically needs to check for any buildings when you click and use the eraser to remove it before the new one is placed. As some objects aren't just rectangles, like the train track curves for example, I can't just do a single erase check based on the building size because the empty spaces allow for overlapping. So instead, I just called an overlap check at every single point in the building that is an empty space. This means that for some buildings, it's firing 20 checks instead of 1, but this does basically nothing to performance, so that's just fine. And with that, the feature was in, I just made sure that the button toggles the feature on and off, and it's all done. While I was making this video, I was playing the game to get some footage for the background of a big city being built, and after about 15 minutes of building, I accidentally hit the bomb and came to a very sudden realization. The undo queue only worked for buildings that were placed, not destroyed. So all that progress was completely gone. And all I could do was watch as the city dissolved into nothing. So I had to refactor the undo code to work both ways. And the first step was to create a new class called undo action. This stored a list of buildings and a bool to say whether it was placing a building or destroying one. I then created a function that basically does the inverse of whatever this bool says, and it passes it through to the relevant functions. But the problem with this is that I was destroying the object straight away when I removed it, which doesn't work for the undo feature. So now, instead, it simply disables the building, but leaves the object in place, and as long as it's still in the undo queue, it stays there. And once it falls out of the undo queue, the object is finally destroyed. Writing this was a bit of a nightmare because my object manager is getting so messy. I really should refactor it, but it's currently working and I'm too scared to mess with it until I absolutely have to. But hey, the bomb now works just fine with the undo feature, so I shouldn't lose any more time with this issue. One of the biggest things that was missing up to this point was any audio. Hey! And without it, the game just feels very flat. Annoyingly, the developer's interesting naming scheme also carried over to the sound files, and it's especially bad with the minifigs, where basically all of the file names are just random numbers and are no help at all. I started by making a basic audio player class that will manage the files for every object that can make noise, as well as an audio class that simply holds an audio clip, as well as a string that acts as a key, so I can search through a list for the correct file easily. I then created a few functions that either play the audio once, as a one-shot sound, or looped. I first added this to the loading screen's iconic whistle, which just makes it so much better. And then added the sound clips to all of the flying encounters. So now the plane, UFO, and geese all make noises as they enter the scene. I'll go through and add all of the audio clips to the minifigs, animals, and buildings, but that will come with the inspector later down the line. I feel like I've said that quite a few times this episode, but trust me, they are coming. And that is how far I've got with my remake of LEGO Loco so far. It's going really well and it's getting that much closer to completion. Thanks for sticking with me this far, and to round this video out, as always, it's time for another round of subscriber wars. So let's throw it over to the arena. Once again, a huge shout out to the VIPs today, such as Jake Lee and Mark Davis for their support. If you want to become a VIP in the arena and support these projects, consider becoming a member here on YouTube, or check out my Patreon page where I post updates and other extra content between videos. But without further ado, let's get this battle started, and they're off. Already Mark Davis getting stuck in with Sapazu. That pitchfork is doing damage. Taco is cool, comes in, but he's no match either. Dorian Perez cleans him up before losing out to Marley Ness. Elsewhere, random person is taking on David Marrell. Looks like there's only going to be one winner there. The zone is closing in, and our last competitors are coming together. Sen Swain is still in the fight, as is Eslam Kafegi. Sen comes out on top from nowhere. Felipe Lopez comes in to steal the win. What a contest that is. Well done, Felipe. If you want to join in on these battles, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. It's that simple. And that's going to do it for today. Congrats to Felipe Lopez for the win there, and I hope you're enjoying these devlogs. Next time I plan on focusing on the inspect features in the game, so seeing what a minifig is called, their detailed pictures, and bringing the magnifying glass in, as well as adding the ability to pick up and move the minifigs, just like in the original. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and comment down below, subscribe so you don't miss any future updates, check out my Patreon page for some more content, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.